welcome back to Blooms and Bicycles. During the month of May, ombres of greenery burst back into life again. And now freewheeling into the height of springtime, we pass through wafts of heaven-sent aromas from the floods of lilac flowers, with great thanks to the people in our local areas who choose to plant them in their gardens and communal spaces. And as the nights draw out and the days become longer, and long sweeping blooms, both trailing and tall, and also in many shades of the lilac colour, together provide a complementing backdrop for this iconic flower. And as they all sway together in the warm spring breeze, all of a sudden it begins to feel like we're pedalling through heaven on earth. To bring the magic of these moments into the home, this collection combines an array of different lilac flower varieties with other complementing blooms in various shades of purples, fresh greens, whites, and silvery lilac lunar tones in what we have decided to call today the Lilacs and Long Days Flower Collection. In this tutorial today, we'll be sharing with you how to construct the Lilacs and Long Days Teapot letterbox flowers. Today our water vessel is already prepared with the water and flower feed. However, if you would like to understand what to do to make your flowers last for as long as possible, you can always refer to our flower care video, which can be found via the link in the description box below. So to begin with, as we always do, we'll start by constructing the grid with the strongest of stems. And in this collection they are the lilac leaves, the common dogwood, and the lilac flowers themselves. And these are going to take centre stage, so everything else will just work around them. So first of all, we'll add the leaves and take the two pieces by adding them in a crisscross formation, allowing them to sweep gently off to each side. And now to take our lilac flowers, we'll work out according to the height of the teapot, which is always lower than an average vase or other type of vessel. We'll trim away and judge the size accordingly by holding the stem towards the back. And with this piece you will receive 3 different varieties of lilac. One is in a very pale lilac colour towards the centre of its petals. The other one is more of a deeper amethyst purple colour, while the next one has undertones of a deep cerise magenta-y pink, and they are all beautiful in their own way. And actually the perfume of each variety is also different, so depending on which one you go close to, you'll find the scent changes. So the lighter the colour, the more along the sweet jasmine notes you'll find the perfume is. And then the more you work towards the deeper shades of lilac going into the more cerise ones, the more of a sandalwood musk comes through. And the other thing to note is how the flower structures are also different depending on the varieties. So with some of them, they're more like a candle shape and very upright, whereas other flowers are much more sweeping and there's a lot more movement in the flower head. Again, just offering different points of interest, as we always talk about. So we'll now take our other 2 pieces of lilac, because we get 3 stems in this piece, always being that magic number we like to refer back to. So cutting on an angle, as we always do, we'll position these into a triangle shape, just making sure that they're not outshined or covered up by any of the greenery added so far. And what can work really well is creating a tiered shape triangle, as we've talked about in previous videos, because varying points of interest also include different heights. And what you'll find is that there might be a number of offshoots on your stem, and you can either keep them just as is, or you can trim away some of the smaller flower heads and put them in the spout. And because we always like to put things in the spout in the teapot, I think that's what we'll do today as well. So there we are. And actually what's quite nice is that the variety with the flower head that has a sweeping movement to it is on both the left and the right now, because that one stem is the one which was split to create what we've now decided upon as a diamond formation. So next to take the lilac coloured limonium, and this is a brilliant material to work with in floristry. It's very low maintenance, and as much as it can be in water, it can also naturally dry out in the room while the arrangement is in place, so that once all your other flowers have passed their best, these pieces can actually be salvaged and incorporated into bud vases around the home or in potpourri as dried flowers. There's always different ways to repurpose it. And they're as delicate as lace, the flowers on limonium. So when we are adding these in, if we're just mindful to watch the delicate stems as we push them in alongside other flowers. So you can either add all of your limonium together, or you can keep some to one side and add it as a finishing touch at the end if you feel like you want to make sure there is an even distribution of lilac all the way through. So that's what we'll do today. And now to take the viburnum snowball, and the zesty fresh colour of this flower is beautiful and also compensates for having minimal foliage. So once it's trimmed away on an angle again, we'll perhaps just add this into the middle. So now we have 3 main points of greenery from left to right. One sweeping off towards the left, one in the middle at a taller point, and the other one off to the right, providing it wants to stay in place. It's just a case of trial and error and trying a different gap in the grid that you've created until you find a place where it's happy to stay still. And now to add our accents of white. So these will come in the varieties of a beautiful dahlia with a yellow centre and this white ranunculus. So you'll get many offshoots coming from the main stem on the ranunculus. And as we always say, never to let anything go to waste, even if you do wish to trim these off because they won't fit as they are in the gap where you envisage them going. We can always keep these to one side and introduce them towards the front of the display at the end as a finishing touch or in the spout. So considering the shape of each individual flower stem, we'll first observe which way it wants to lean. So holding this here, you can see this curve makes it want to go forward, which will be absolutely perfect for putting this in the central area of the grid, just underneath the viburnum. And just on the note of the ranunculus actually, as with the Blossom Season collection last month, these ranunculus will also come to you pre-wired, just to make sure that the shelf life of the stem upholds for as long as possible, to make sure that flower gets a chance to burst into life as much as it can. So with the splashes of white, you'll receive 2 of the ranunculus and 3 of the dahlias to create 5 different points, and almost like a star if you will. So again, we'll trim away the stems if they look like they're not going to fit too well into the space that we envisage it going. And now to add our dahlias. So as we always say, once you've trimmed them down on the angle, if you introduce them at varying heights to get that tiered look, as well as creating either a triangle, a diamond or a star-like formation, this will add varying points of interest while still having a natural balance to it. So it's just a case of trial and error again, trying different gaps in the grid, and as we've said previously as well, the stems don't have to go all the way to the bottom of the teapot or vase. They can actually sit up the sides of the water vessel if the grid allows them to be held in position. And this can really allow for unexpected, unusual angles to be played with. We'll now take our silvery lilac lunar toned rose. I love this rose. It almost looks ethereal and actually does look a little bit like the colour of the moon. It's not actually brilliant white, it's like an ethereal coloured white because there are tones of like lilac-y grey that seem to run through it, and as a colour is pretty stunning, and I think that's why I'm so taken by this rose. And so with those lilac undertones, it felt like the perfect collection to add it into. So I think actually this rose cut down significantly and introduced at the very front, in between the two different lilacs on the right hand side, will just help break them purple tones up a little bit. And next to add the Canterbury bells. So in this piece you'll receive one lilac and one white coloured one. And if any of the flowers look like they're too low and will fall under the watermark, again, if we keep hold of these and add them at the end. And sorry if you can hear Bella whistling away in the background. So allowing one to lean off to the left while another one can lean off to the right. It might just be worth introducing one which leans to the left and the front, and maybe then with the other one to the right and the back, or vice versa. And we'll just thread these in, again, in between the lilacs to start creating that real natural burst effect. And now to add the Ornithagalum sundereaceae. So maybe if we just add this under the viburnum, just for an added splash of greenery. So the grid is becoming quite packed now. So the trial and error can be a bit longer than it was at the beginning. And now to take those ranunculus offshoots, we'll just dot these around the design as you see fit. So nothing has gone to waste. And now to add the finishing touches of Limonium. Again, these don't have to go into the water because as they naturally air dry, they will retain all of their colour and their form. So they can just sit like a cloud, similar to the asparagus fern in last month's collection actually. They can just rest almost in mid-air on top of the grid, just to fill any final voids. And finally, to take the most delicate of stems in this collection, we'll add the remaining pieces, which are 3 different varieties of lilac tone clematis. And we'll just insert those again into the grid where there's any final voids. And sometimes allowing those to sit lower than some of the bigger statement flower heads, and just watching how they naturally sprawl out throughout the design, it really adds to that garden style effect. Although you could add them higher if you want and make a real statement out of them as well. But I guess when you look at the way clematis grows in a garden, it always does wrap itself around other varieties, doesn't it? And so taking inspiration from the way nature goes about things when it's doing its own thing can actually just create a design that looks really stunning. And with this final piece, as you can see, it's quite long, and the flower heads actually grow off very long stems. But to really make the most of this, we could actually arch it across the flower design once it's in the water, mind. So we just need to first of all make sure it is definitely in a gap in the grid, which allows it to have a good drink, because clematis is a thirsty flower. But once we've done that, so I've found a gap at the very front of the teapot, and now I'm allowing it, just by pulling very gently on the back of the stem, it's allowing it to arch backwards from the front to the back, but that's now allowing those long stemmed flowers to sit perfectly and interlace throughout the rest of the display. And there you have it, the Lilacs and Long Days Teapot Letterbox flowers. I hope you enjoy the rest of May, and we can't wait to see you back here in June. Bye for now.